think about the last song, movie, or maybe a piece of street art that really stuck with you.
Mm-hmm.
Was it just, enjoyable, or did it spark something else?
Maybe think a bit. Maybe question something.
Exactly. Maybe even got under your skin a little. That's the really fascinating double life of cultural and creative industries.
Absolutely. And today, we're digging into exactly that, using insights from Associate Professor Dimitar Trendafilov's article, Creative Industries and Social Messages. It's part of the DigiCresh project.
Right. And for you, the learner, listening in, always wanting to get to the heart of things, quickly but thoroughly, this deep dive is all about cracking open how that creative world, the stuff we often just consume, also works as this surprisingly powerful way to carry social messages.
Yeah, you're navigating this constant flood of information, right?
Yeah.
Understanding this dynamic gives you a pretty useful new lens to make sense of it all.
So our mission today is really to look beyond just the economics, the balance sheets of these cultural and creative industries, the CCIs.
We want to uncover how they actually, stimulate thought, challenge norms we often just accept, and sometimes even ignite social and political debate.
And we'll do that by looking at some, frankly, really compelling examples.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. When we say cultural and creative industries, what exactly are we talking about?
Well, at their core, CCIs are about the commercial side of things, using creativity, skills, intellectual property to generate income through specific products or services.
Okay, like music, films, design, ads, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Any sector where that creative input is really the main driver.
Got it. But as the source points out, it's not just about selling things, is it? There's this other layer.
Precisely. This often overlooked dimension. Their ability to carry social messages. And often, messages that deliberately push back, that go against the grain.
Nonconformist messages.
Yeah, they often seek attention, sometimes even court controversy,
Yeah.
to make people think about big societal issues, locally or globally.
And there's an intention there.
Oh, usually quite a clear intention from the creators. To provoke thought, challenge stereotypes, break taboos, even question really deeply held beliefs and values.
It sounds quite serious. Risky, even.
It can be.
Yeah.
Definitely a serious undertaking, and as we'll see, it can involve real risks for the people involved.
Yeah, it's a world away from, trying to figure out confusing instructions for some gadget you bought. The stakes feel higher.
Totally different.
But, okay, there's a bit of a conflict here, isn't there? These are often businesses. They need to make money.
Right.
Doesn't that make you, question how genuine the social message is? Is it real belief or just smart marketing?
That's a really critical point, that profit motive. It definitely makes audiences look closely at the motivations.
Yeah, you get suspicious.
You do. Is this sincere engagement or just a tactic to sell more music, more tickets, whatever the product is?
Like greenwashing.
Exactly. The source brings up greenwashing companies looking much more environmentally friendly than they actually are. It shows that risk, doesn't it? A worthy cause potentially being used just for commercial gain.
Okay. So these creative industries sit in this really unique spot. Selling something, yes, but also trying to communicate something that might not pay off immediately, financially anyway.
Precisely. CCIs can act as these channels for messages totally outside of normal economic exchange.
How so?
Well, they can even trigger what the source calls uneconomic behavior. Actions driven by values or beliefs, not by getting something tangible in return.
Like choosing not to buy something because of how it's made.
Exactly. Boycotting a brand over its labor practices, for instance. That doesn't add to the GDP right away.
Fascinating. So actions that don't immediately show up in the economic stats can still be really significant.
Absolutely. And it goes further. CCIs can even spark anti-economic behavior.
Anti-economic, what does that mean?
It means people actively changing how they consume based on a message. Think about someone ditching fast fashion after watching a documentary about its impact. They're redirecting their spending, potentially spending less overall in that area.
Wow, that's powerful stuff. So these provocative messages, they can really stick around and have an effect way beyond just the initial sales push.
History seems to show that. The source points out that loads of these intentionally provocative things, they get remembered, talked about for ages.
Right.
That lasting presence in our, collective memory, it suggests a kind of success that isn't just about the money made right then.
Okay, let's dive into some actual examples. The first one that jumps out is Apple's 1984 commercial. I mean, everyone knows that one, right?
Oh, totally. It's legendary.
Yeah.
Often called one of the best ads ever. And it's a perfect example of a CCI product carrying this massive social and, let's be honest, competitive message.
That whole dystopian thing, Apple as the liberator against Big Brother, which everyone knew meant IBM back then.
Exactly. But here's the really interesting twist. The source highlights this. The actual product it was advertising, the Macintosh, it subsequently failed in sales.
No way, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, market conditions weren't right, apparently. But despite the Mac's slow start, the ad itself, huge impact, long-lasting.
How so?
It massively boosted Apple's brand identity. The sheer buzz, the publicity from its challenging message, resonating with that American individualist spirit. The source calls it priceless.
So, product didn't boom initially, but the message built the brand for the long haul, even though apparently Steve Jobs himself had mixed feelings about the ad later.
Exactly. Whether building the brand long-term was the main goal is up for debate, but its value to Apple over decades, undeniable.
Okay, shifting gears. More recent, more overtly social. Nike and Colin Kaepernick. That caused a huge stir.
It really did. A massive global brand stepping right into a super sensitive issue. Racial injustice, police brutality.
Supporting Kaepernick's kneeling protests during the anthem, that was a bold move.
Incredibly bold,
Yeah.
especially given the political climate at the time.
And the reaction was intense, wasn't it? I remember the debates, the boycotts, even the president weighing in.
Oh yeah, it ignited a firestorm. Kaepernick's football career effectively ended because of it.
But he became this huge symbol for a movement, right?
Precisely. His playing career stopped, but his actions, his stance, they stayed right at the center of public conversation. And Nike deliberately tied their brand to that message, knowing full well it would alienate some people, but resonate strongly with others.
Okay, but sometimes these attempts at social messaging, they just spectacularly backfire, don't they? Pepsi's 2017 campaign comes to mind.
Oof. Oh boy. Yeah, that's like a case study in how not to do it.
What went wrong there? Let's unpack it.
Well, they basically took imagery that looked a lot like Black Lives Matter protests
Right.
and put a white reality TV star, Kendall Jenner, in the middle of it, seemingly solving the tension by handing a cop a can of Pepsi.
Yeah, it felt incredibly tone deaf, trivializing almost.
Exactly. The source mentions the strong criticism and negative publicity. It just screamed inauthenticity, like they were trying to borrow the coolness of activism without any real understanding or commitment.
It really backfired. Okay, let's talk about a brand that actually built its whole identity, for a while anyway, I'm being provocative. Benetton. Late 80s, early 90s.
Oh yeah, aggressive, shocking. Those words definitely apply. Their ads under Oliviero Toscani, they went straight for really sensitive, often taboo topics.
What kind of things?
War, the mafia, the death penalty, AIDS, and especially racism. They use these incredibly confronting images, not subtle at all.
And the thinking behind it was, what? Just shock value.
Well, according to the source, the idea from Toscani and Luciano Benetton was kind of, we have this huge advertising budget, why not use it to say something important?
About what?
About, opening borders, common human themes, connecting people, but linking that directly to selling sweaters. That was always controversial.
Right. I bet. People must have been really divided on whether it was genuine social commentary or just exploitative marketing.
Absolutely. Opinion was sharply split.
And then they tried to do something similar later with the Unhate campaign with the world leaders kissing.
Yeah, that was much later. Digitally altered images of, like, the Pope kissing an imam, Obama kissing Hugo Chavez.
Right. Did that work as well?
Not really, according to the source. The cultural context was different. It felt a bit like trying to recapture that old shock value, maybe. It got attention, sure, but maybe more criticism than real resonance this time.
Interesting how timing and context matter so much. Okay, moving from fashion to music. U2. Huge band, massive success, but also deeply involved in social and political stuff, especially Bono.
Definitely. And the documentary Kiss the Future highlights this brilliantly, focusing on the siege of Sarajevo during the Bosnian War.
Right, I heard about that.
It shows how U2's music became this lifeline, almost, a source of hope, affecting people's psychological state, their desire for peace, particularly the young people trapped in the city.
Wow. Music having that kind of impact in a war zone. And didn't someone from Sarajevo actually reach out to the band?
Yeah, an American aid worker named Bill Carter. He managed to get through to them, which led to those satellite link-ups during their concerts.
Oh, right, where they broadcast live from Sarajevo.
Exactly. And eventually it led to the concert after the war, and that incredible song, Miss Sarajevo with Pavarotti.
Such a haunting song.
It is. But the source also notes something interesting. Over time, the impact of Bono's stage speeches and video appeals maybe started to fade a bit.
Why is that?
Perhaps a sense that talk needs to lead to action. Or maybe, as the source suggests, Bono himself stepped back a bit to avoid looking like he was just promoting himself rather than the cause.
That makes sense. But that concert they eventually played in Sarajevo in '97 after the war,
Yeah.
that must have been huge.
Absolutely massive,
Yeah.
symbolically immense. It really cemented their reputation as messengers for peace, solidarity, tolerance. It wasn't just a gig, it was part of the healing process for the city.
And they've done similar things since, haven't they? Like playing the Bataclan in Paris after the attacks.
Exactly. That concert showed that continued commitment, using their platform in moments of trauma and recovery.
Okay, let's shift again. More grassroots examples.
Yeah.
That disruptive creation thing in Bulgaria with the Red Army Monument sounds intriguing.
It really is. Happened back in 2011. A group of young artists overnight basically repainted the figures on this big, imposing Soviet-era monument in Sofia
Repainted them as what?
as pop culture icons. Superman, the Joker, Ronald McDonald, Santa Claus, Wonder Woman, a whole lineup. And they added a slogan, "In step with the times."
Wow. I can imagine that caused a bit of a stir.
Oh, absolutely. Polarized reactions, the source says. You had people defending the monument as history versus others questioning why this Soviet symbol is still so prominent, basically arguing it wasn't in step with the times.
So it used humor and familiar images to spark a really serious public debate about history and identity.
Precisely. Very direct, very provocative, and the source makes a really interesting comparison here to Banksy.
Ah, the anonymous street artist. How so?
Well, Banksy also uses public spaces, urban environments, to slap these often uncomfortable messages right in your face about violence, power, consumerism, human weaknesses, sensitive stuff.
Right. But Banksy's work now sells for millions at auction, doesn't it? And he's this huge pop culture figure, partly because he's anonymous.
Exactly. That's the contrast. Banksy has achieved massive commercial success alongside the provocation. His anonymity, his unpredictability, the way his messages hit home, it's made him this global icon.
Whereas the Bulgarian artists are maybe more focused on the immediate local debate.
It seemed like it. Banksy operates on this global stage, blending critique with this kind of mystique that people find fascinating.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, bringing it all together. What are the main things we should really take away from this deep dive?
Well, I think first it's just seeing that these CCIs, they're way more than just businesses making money. They have this real power to spread social messages.
Right, they're not just neutral platforms.
Definitely not. Second, those messages are often deliberately provocative, designed to make us think, challenge things.
Okay. And third?
Third, the way people react is all over the map. Outrage, inspiration, indifference, action. It varies hugely.
Yeah, we saw that with Nike, Benetton.
Exactly. And finally, history shows that even stuff that fails commercially, like the original Mac with the 1984 ad, can still have this massive lasting cultural impact because of the message it carried.
So for you listening, understanding this whole dynamic gives you, a much richer way to look at the media and culture you see every day, doesn't it?
It really does. It's not just about whether you like the movie or the song. It's about seeing how creativity, business, and social commentary are all tangled up, constantly shaping our world.
Which leads to a pretty big question, I guess.
Yeah.
Thinking about all these examples, what responsibility do these creative industries actually have when they decide to put out a social message?
That's a great question. And for you, the listener, maybe also think about that. How critically do you engage with these messages embedded in the art and entertainment you consume every day?
Because that line between genuine commentary and just clever branding, it can be really blurry sometimes, can't it? What tools can you use to even tell the difference? Something to think about.